Hi, John.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Too bad.
Thank you for joining me for the Meet the Artist interview series.
Happy to.
So I'm starting out, everyone gets the same question.
Hmm.
How old were you when you started taking ballet, and how did you get put in ballet? Why
Ah,
ballet?
well, I was about 8 years old, and I guess I wasn't put into it. I self-selected and made my mother put me into it. Um, when my mother was a yoga teacher in Marin County, and she would always go in the mornings to the studio that I ended up training at Dance Theater 7. And, I'd go with her as she was teaching her classes. I would just like sit in the lobby or something like that. And there were three older boys that were always in there in the mornings before class practicing all their tricks and stuff. And so 7, 8 years old, I would just sit there and just watch these three guys like throwing themselves around the room and doing all this crazy stuff. And I was like, this seems pretty great to me. Like, I would love to do that. And so, after my mom came down from yoga class, because she used to teach in the upstairs studio, I was like, can I get signed up to do this?
So you started at Dance Theater 7 then, which means you started somewhere that was already a really good school.
Yes, I was very fortunate that there happened to be, David Roxander and Jody White, his mother, were there at Dance Theater 7. And yeah, I know, like Fairfax, California, and the ex-principal dancer for National Ballet of Canada just happened to open a school there. It's like really random, but that's where we ended up.
And then was there a tipping point when you decided you wanted to do it professionally?
So at Dance Theater 7, we had at the time we had a pre-professional, and I changed name to the professional program. And what that entailed was going to homeschooling or independent study in this case. And you were pretty much there from about 9 in the morning to 7 at night, 6 days a week. And so that was when I was in the end of sixth grade. So and summer of sixth grade, moving into seventh grade. So I was probably, what is that, 12 or 13, is when I decided to really get after it and try and see if I could progress, which is, about as late as you probably want to leave that if you can.
So then from Dance Theater 7, you went directly into the company of Sacramento Ballet. Right?
No, I joined Ballet Memphis as a trainee. So I
Oh,
1 year in Ballet Memphis as a trainee, um, which was, yeah, a huge education, moving directly from Marin County, graduating high school, and then 2 weeks later finding yourself in Memphis, Tennessee was eye-opening to say the least. I had some amazing opportunities while I was there, though, and they had really good really great choreographers that were always coming through there. And so that was a lot of the reason why I ended up going there, because, that I sort of followed the ethos that if I met some really and could work with choreographers, they go to a lot of companies. And so if I was going to be mobile between places, that seemed like a good way to go about it. And I made really good. That's where I originally met Trey McIntyre. And that summer, I ended up doing the Trey McIntyre Project when it was just a summer gig. And then through him, that's how I ended up getting the job at Sacramento Ballet, because he had just been there. So,
okay.
yeah, sort
That's
of.
interesting. I was going to ask you, of course, about Trey, and I had no idea it went that far back.
Yeah, literally since I was 18.
So you said you were a trainee in Memphis.
I was. Yeah.
So I've been talking with everyone, and second company, trainee, apprentice, every company has their own sort of
Yep.
spin on it.
Uh-huh.
What was the traineeship like?
So the traineeship in Ballet Memphis, you were like a company member that was always last to get cast. so so you were a part of every rehearsal, you learned everything, you were always there, but it was actually just company policy that they casted everybody that was in the company before you were actually cast in that. But it essentially was, you're a company member and act like it, and then we'll see how it goes. And then at some point when I was, auditioning during that year to see where I was going to go next after Memphis, Ron Cunningham called me and said, would you come out and audition? Trey McIntyre put in a really good word and said that, and you came recommended by him.
So that must have been nice. That's a bit closer to home.
Yes. Yeah. It was great coming back to California, being a little closer to home, an hour and a half drive, which I did far too often, or just right if you're my mother, to get back to Marin. And I got to do a lot of classical work, which is something that I actually, and still have enough contemporary to sink my teeth into, which is something I wanted to do.
So when did you join Smuin the first time?
That would be 2009. If it 06, 07, 07, 08, 08, 09. Yeah, 2009 is when I joined, and they were doing Petit Moor.
That ballet is on so many people's bucket lists.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is, and with good reason. So yeah, that's when I ended up coming down in 2009.
Was Terez already here?
Terez was here. Terez was here, and actually on my the very first day of work, my very first rehearsal after class was learning Michael Smuin's Under My Skin from his Sinatra Ballet with Terez. The very first thing that I ever did with Smuin Ballet was walk over to Terez to start learning that part of it.
Well, that worked out.
Yeah, it worked out right.
I mean, yeah, thank you to the casting for that.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy.
So you were at Smuin from, how long were you here that first time?
I was there for 4 seasons.
4 seasons, okay.
Yeah.
And was it during that time, did Trey create for the company?
Yes, he did.
He did.
So during that time, he created, what's the piece to the shins? Can't believe I'm forgetting that right now.
I know, I'm also blanking on it, but that's what I'm thinking. Yes, okay. The Shins Ballet, we'll call it the Shins Ballet.
I can't believe that I can't remember it right now. It'll come to me. So he created it in my second season, if I'm not mistaken. And I was actually injured at the time. It was really unfortunate because he had, we had exchanged either emails or text messages or calls at the time. And he was super excited to be coming to work with, at Smuin Ballet and with the dancers there. And he was super excited. Like it was going to be the first time that we really could dive into something.
And that was his first piece for Smuin, I think.
I think so. Yes, yeah. I think so. But I, very similar to the way in Memphis that he always, was like, get in here and be at the front. I would crutch my way in and watch rehearsals. And I sort of understudied what ended up being sort of like the featured role, which my very good friend, Travis Walker, it was created on him. So I ended up learning it. And then later on, Travis actually ended up joining Trey McIntyre Project. And when we restaged the work, I ended up performing that role.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was starting to worry. So 4 seasons with Smuin, and then you decided to follow Trey to Trey McIntyre Project, which at that point was a full-time company as opposed to just what you said earlier. It was like a summer thing.
Yeah. The company originally started, him and John Michael Shirt had started as a summertime project, but it was sort of a residency program at the White Oak Plantation in Jacksonville, Florida. It was probably in its 5th or 6th season by the time that I joined after Smuin, and its full-time season based out of Boise, Idaho.
Trey McIntyre Project, the full-time company, was a very big deal. I mean, I remember hearing about it a lot, and it's like the fact that he'd set up in Boise, people were very surprised, but it seemed to be really successful, and he was doing all sorts of interesting, programs that were probably like art meets outreach type of thing.
Yeah.
So what was it like to be a part of that?
Yeah, it was, it was a lot of the reason that I went. I wanted to work really closely with sort of like a single choreographer company where there was a really strong, artistic vision of everything from top to bottom, because it was all being, you know, created out of somebody's mind on the spot, on the fly. And they were very innovative in how they were doing programming, how they were doing outreach. I mean, their whole branding and everything. I mean, that was really what made that place so special, and why its reach was so far, even though it was 10 dancers in Boise, Idaho. I mean, they really did a phenomenal job. That was a combination of, I mean, Trey's work itself is like it's really innovative, it's really athletic, it's accessible in a lot of ways that some dance isn't. Like, I feel like a lot of people feel as if they can relate to it, but it has incredible depth where even if you're a seasoned you know, dance patron or somebody that sees dance and stuff, there's so much material within every 8 count that you can get stuck into as much, and the musicality is really good. But because it has this athletic and a lot more almost like pedestrian movements that are also a part of it, if you're somebody that's new to these things, you know, it also feels very relatable for you.
You retired,
Yeah.
in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And then at what point, what made you retire is maybe what I should ask first.
I was tired a little bit. I think I just needed a break more than anything else. I mean, I had, with Trey that year, I had done, I think we had performed in 30 something cities over 6 months or something like that. I mean, it was constant. It was go, go, go. I mean, and I had left Smuin right as, you know, my relationship with Terez had really, you know, taken over my life. Yeah. And so I always sort of knew that I was going to go for a year, because this was something that I had dreamt about doing, that I always had wanted to do. And that was really important for me in my life. You know, it was just, when the opportunity came, it was something that there was no way that I could say no to it. But I knew that there was this real strong magnetic pull that was gonna have me come back. And I was 26. I had no injuries. My body was totally fine. And but I had seen other dancers that had, you know, season or career-ending injuries, you know, and there was no other plan. And I mean, to be honest, I was scared. I didn't have another plan. If anything had happened to me at that time. And so that's when I came back and I had been working on getting my real estate license, came back to the test and just sort of went full bore into it.
So Smuin brought you back as a guest artist, actually. I want to say it was 2018 for If I Were a Sushi Roll.
Yes, yes, they did. I know it was 2018 because it was the year that Terez and I got married. I got a call on Tuesday, which was the week leading up to my bachelor party, and they wanted me to start on Monday after that weekend. That was great. So I came in on that Monday to work with Helen Pickett. And right after class, she goes, okay, I want to take the waltz section that's in the middle of the piece, and I want to scrap that whole section, and I want to do a new trio with Terez, Ben, and John. And I was like, hold on. And I just went up to her and I said, all right, girl, I'm going to level with you for a minute. I might need a 5 every once in a while, because this is going to be rough for me. And I did just get after, my bachelor party ended yesterday. And it's been 3 years. So just so you know, and she's like, absolutely. So yeah, it was a hell of a re-entry, to say the least. And
so you were able to do that, I guess, in part because you had the flexibility in your schedule as a realtor.
Yeah. Definitely. I did. And I have a business partner who understands. I mean, he understands getting into business with me, that I'm sort of like a creative crazy and, you know, have side projects going on and stuff. And we have a really good, close working relationship where we can handle these things and pass off to one another.
So this is one of my favorite stories. Smuin moved into our first permanent home last fall. Great timing.
Yeah.
Actually, really good timing, because if we didn't have it, I don't know where we would be right now.
Truth.
But you played a pivotal role in this milestone.
I did.
Would you like to share?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was truly an amazing coming together of my two worlds. Right as I had split into real estate, and ended up being my first sale as a realtor. And so it was, right when I got back to San Francisco, I had heard that, Celia and Smuin were looking for a permanent home. They'd been working with somebody, but it hadn't really had much success in being able to identify a building. And I was completely green to the business and new, but I thought to myself immediately, like, who would know better? Like, I can walk into a building and say yes or no immediately without you ever having to go there, because I've spent more time in a studio than I have anywhere else in my entire life. And so, it was a little bit of that, naivete, and just sort of like that I just walked up to her and said, why don't I take a crack at finding something for you guys? And I had called a guy who was sort of like the lead commercial realtor that was within my brokerage, because right away it was like, there's no way that I could do this myself. I obviously did not have the experience, while I did have very specific knowledge of what the client needed. And he called me up and he said, hey, this guy has a listing that just came up on 17th Street. Maybe it'll work. You should go take a look at it. And so I drove over there and I walked in and I was like, oh my God, we found it. This is amazing. It's a dance studio. It already has the use in place, which in San Francisco is unheard of. And at the time, the thinking was to do, like a light renovation, have something good to go, which you probably, you could have done. But what ended up happening is far superior. But, I walked in and I'm like, you could turn this around relatively quickly and just, get going. And so I called up Celia, they came and took a look, and it was like, yeah, this is it. Like, we can make this happen. And, I think that this in total was probably 6 or 7 weeks after I had had that initial conversation with her. It happened real fast.
And it looks very different now, of course, but
completely different. The capital raising campaign that was undertaken in order to really give it its due, instead of going in and, doing a half measure, they went for the full kit and caboodle, and it's amazing to see what the end product has been. And now they can just continue to grow, or we can just continue to grow. I guess I can say we now. Yeah.
So you're back now, dancing in this building you helped us acquire.
Yep.
Your second time, no, I guess third. This is your third time at Smuin.
Yeah. Yes.
So even though the circumstances are a bit odd, are there things you're excited about?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I said yes when Celia called to talk about perhaps doing this season, was because it was sort of odd. While I would love to dance on a stage again, the thought of coming in and just having like a creative sort of chaotic season where we were just going to have to be like pivoting and figuring out how we're going to perform, how are we going to find a way to perform in front of people, or are we just pivoting to video, or whatever it may be. It really piqued my interest to sort of be a part of a process like that, because I love solving problems and coming up with creative solutions for things. This time I have a little bit more of a ramp up compared to last time I had 3 weeks until the show, which was nuts. This time it's going to be for the full course of the season, albeit, an unusual season. But I can really be a little bit more thoughtful and deliberate about how I'm going to re-enter this world as a almost 33-year-old this time.
So you and Terez were really busy during quarantine with your video projects. You did 3 dance films. Was that fun?
Oh, yeah.
They seemed fun. I like watching them.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a great experience. My really good friend Elliot Morin is a filmmaker, and we had always talked about doing something. And right when everything was going to get shut down, he was like, "Well, all my work is dried up, so why don't we just create something?" And we talked about, you know, being in person the next week and filming something, and you know, in short order, we can realize that probably was not going to be something that we could do physically in person. So we came up with this weird version where we'd film things on our phones and send it over to him, and he would edit them. And it was just an exercise in being creative. And we ended up making some sort of interesting work out of it. And I'm so thankful for it, because as we look back on it now, during those months of, you know, March, April, May, when nothing was known, we didn't know what we were going to do next, and you had so much time to think about the fact that you had no idea what was going to happen. We were creating work, you know, and spending 15 hours a week, or, you know, 20 hours a week on this. And I don't know what we would have done with that time otherwise. You know, I have a lot of energy. Terez makes me look like a sloth. So, you know, between the two of us, I don't know, we would have burned down the house.
And I feel like you guys were really sort of at the forefront of the dance, there have been a lot of dance films made and put out during this time, but you guys had some of the first ones, which is cool. Have you seen a shift in the arts that you think is positive and that you want to see continue?
Absolutely. I think from my time at Trey, and, you know, seeing how they were sort of working on like a paradigm shift, it's always been something that I've been really, or from then on, it sort of piqued my interest in something that I have continued to be really interested in, is how we can shift and grow the audience base of dance. And this rather unfortunate situation that we're all dealing with has definitely forced artists, and particularly the fine art world, in a direction that they were pretty reticent to go in. So now we have to get creative and film things and find different ways of getting it out and go on Zoom. And I think it'll finally intersect the technology and the tech world with artists in a way that was really needing to happen, but just wasn't. I'm very, very hopeful that we're going to see a huge boom in creativity on both sides coming out of this. And already with like Terez's classes that she's been teaching online, I think we've seen it where with all of these online ballet classes or dance classes that are available, there's a whole host of people that never would have stepped foot into a dance studio because it was intimidating or too far or whatever it was that was the difficulty in crossing that threshold. There's an entire new, base of patrons and enthusiasts that otherwise wouldn't have had access to it. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Well, we're so excited that you're back this season.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very excited to be back.